I have been going to the gym for 4 years now, 3 years without skipping a day. So I thought I would bring to you everything I've learned over this time period, everything that's helped me get extremely strong and aesthetic at the same time. Really, just the lessons I've learned over this time period, how I've stayed so consistent, little small things that you may not think of or may not know of in your lifting journey. I know you won't like all of the things I say because I simply wouldn't listen to them at the start because I just didn't like them. I didn't like the idea behind them. I had my own opinions on things, but these are things that eventually I realized that I personally had to come to the realization that my mindset and certain things inside of the gym were just wrong. And I want to bring those to you so you could correct those sooner rather than later. Now, I want to begin with some advice if you struggle to stay consistent. If you have those random time periods where you're going to the gym for, say, 6 months and then you get kind of lazy for a couple months, 2 months, take those couple months off, and then go 6 more months. You keep repeating this cycle, so you're not making any actual crazy progress because you keep resetting the progress that you get. Now, this is going to be the best solution to that to help avoid losing any progress when you do get burnt out. Now, my first day lifting was when one of my buddies got a bench press inside of his house and a few dumbbells. He got it for Christmas. And he said, "Hey, Jacob, come over. I just got this weight set. Now, let's go lift. Let's try this out." So I came over and we had a good time. We lifted, we messed around. It was our first session. Not much to expect from that. And then it started becoming this thing. It started becoming this hangout that we enjoyed while at the same time, oh, I'm getting stronger. I'm seeing progress every single day. I want to keep on going. So then it created this positive feedback loop because we were there together. But really, what I want to emphasize with this is not necessarily the fact that I was doing this with a friend. I want to emphasize the fact that this was a home gym that is really cheap for any of you to get. All of us have heard that rule where if you just make it a little bit easier, if you start it and you make it a little bit easier, just do the first few steps, then suddenly you're going to have the motivation to do it. Just drive to the gym. And then once you're there, you're going to be like, okay, I'm already here. Let's work out. Well, I have a better thing than that. Why not, rather than forcing yourself to drive to the gym because that's the part that people skip, why not just buy a $400 bench press instead of weights to have it right at your house? It's making it easier. It's the idea of, oh, I don't have to tie my shoelace. I could just walk over and start working out. Maybe I really despise working out, so I could mix it with something in my house. Let's say I'm still stuck in a complete gamer phase and I can't stop my games. Maybe you could alternate doing one of your Fortnite games or whatever you're playing and going and doing a set of bench. Now, my point of this is I don't recommend doing that, but what I do recommend is getting a home gym to make it easier. Whatever stage you're at, this is going to help no matter what. And I know $400 sounds like a lot, but is it really a lot when it's your physical fitness you're talking about? I mean, if it's the difference between you getting in better shape, being more aesthetic looking, being more appealing, being in a better mood because you actually train and you're healthy, and then you're likely going to make more money in your future, or you could just not spend that $400 and have the negative consequences of poor health, poor aesthetics, etc. And I mean, it's not that hard to ask your boss for a few extra hours one week. Hey, can I pick up one shift this day? Or ask your coworkers, hey, do you want a day off? I could take your shift if you want. It's really easy to just supplement a little bit of time for that bench press. And if you're wondering how you're going to train legs, most of the cheap bench presses, this one we got was from Dick's. It was like $200, and then you have to buy the weight. So that's where I put the other $200 in for. but it comes with you could just remove the bench and then squat in the rack that normally has the bench. So it's not that hard to hit legs at home. Next, I want to talk about your hormones. Now, all of you know that my channel is around testosterone and cortisol and estrogen, certain things you could manipulate to change your health, change your brain, change a lot of things. But I want you to think of this differently, all the advice I'm giving you. So, when people think of going to the gym, I hear the saying all the time, oh, going to the gym is only 50% of it. The other 50% is your diet and sleep. Well, I'm going to say something different than that. I'm going to say going to the gym is about 25% of it, and the other 75% is simply just focusing on ways to boost your testosterone. Think of the different advice you hear online. Train hard inside of the gym, train past failure. What's that going to do? That's going to boost your testosterone. That's going to give you more gains. Everything you hear is going to be related to gains. Sleep more, tied to testosterone. Get a healthier diet, tied to testosterone. The list goes on. Anything you hear is somehow tied to testosterone. So if you really just focus on manipulating your testosterone levels to return to what they should be, to be 700 plus, then that's how you're going to make the most gains inside of the gym. That's going to be the thing that makes the difference between you staying skinny fat, staying below a 225 bench for years, and getting a 225 bench within 3 months of lifting. Solely your testosterone. Next, I want to talk about ego lifting and specifically why it's actually bad. And I know a lot of people may think that, well, I'm having heavier weight in my arms than I can without ego lifting, or I'm squatting more than I can without ego lifting, so I'm getting used to the weight. And getting used to the weight is obviously going to make whatever weight is lighter feel easier when I'm doing proper form. And that is true, but there's a much more effective way to do this. This is way simpler than people make it. This isn't an excuse to ego lift. Now, I specifically mean things that reduce the amount of tension on your muscle during the middle of the rep. Now, some examples of this are squatting for a half rep or hip thrusting your bench. If you're squatting for a half rep, then you're not going to get as much knee flexion. Your quads are going to stay small. Or if you're hip thrusting your bench, you're going to have the issue I had for a while. Your chest just won't grow. And the reason behind that is simply because the bottom of the lift, where you have the most tension on your chest, you're simply using your legs to get yourself out of that position. But I know if you're somebody who does these things, I haven't convinced you of anything yet. So what is the alternative to this? Now, the alternative to this is loading your body in other ways, getting used to heavier weight without actually hitting that heavier weight. Now, I don't recommend doing negatives, which a lot of people do, because they are extremely dangerous. One of the highest risk of injury things you could do inside the gym. If you want to tear a pec, then go ahead and do a negative of some insane weight. Or if you want to blow your back out, do a negative of an insane squat. Now, why do you think you never see people doing negatives of, let's say, a squat? Because a squat, people are concerned about their back. They're concerned, oh, this has an extremely high risk of injury. But people forget that you could get injured on bench too. So I just recommend not doing negatives. Instead, do a static hold. Do this with about 150% of your max, and you'll start to really get used to whatever you're repping out on a normal day. Now, keep in mind, this does change. You could drop it to around 125%. For example, when I was benching, I think it was 335, I was doing 485 static holds, and that blew me past that plateau because I got used to heavier weight. So everybody's going to plateau. There's this sort of YouTube, TikTok trend slash view baiting that goes around of, oh, do this and you'll avoid plateaus. This is what's going to cause your next plateau. And people see it and they think, oh, yes, I have to implement this. This is going to prevent me from plateauing. I'm going to keep making gains. So why would I not implement this? And well, when you're implementing something, you have to take something away. Your body simply can't recover from a certain amount. So, what I'm getting at is that certain muscles or certain movement patterns or small little things will always break down on your form and always need to be adjusted. Now, this idea sounds bad, the fact that you're forced to plateau at some point, but I want to make it a bit more optimistic and a bit more positive. Because you're forced to plateau, a plateau is where you actually see your weak points and where you need to improve. So you'll notice that over time, my gains are starting to slow down. Now, they'll slow down and eventually they'll just stop. And you'll notice whatever your weakness is and you'll start training that. Now, when you start training that, you're basically going to feel like you have newbie gains again, and the cycle is going to repeat. You're going to have a very positive effect if you're always looking at yourself whenever you plateau. But the issue with ego lifting is it prevents you from properly analyzing what's happening. If you're doing a hip thrust bench, your form isn't going to be consistent. There's going to be too many small little factors that change throughout the day, change how you're doing your bench on a certain day. There's too many variables for you to be able to actually identify what your weakness is. So you will get stuck in this plateau for a very long time if you are ego lifting. So that right there is the main reason I'm against ego lifting, because I believe you can make crazy gains if you just have the ability to look at your form and adjust to whatever happens. I think your biggest gains come out of a plateau. Next, I want to bring up rest times. So there's this whole idea of, oh, if I train super hard, if I'm going crazy, if I don't rest and I'm just super, super sore, then obviously I did something. And this idea really comes from personal trainers who don't know what they're doing. It's a personal trainer scam. Imagine you go to a personal trainer and they send you through this extremely difficult workout. It's extremely hard because you don't get a rest at all. Versus a personal trainer that makes you go extremely hard during your sets, but they let you recover. They make you feel good for your next set. You're simply not going to feel like you worked as hard at the end of the day, but that doesn't matter. Because when you are resting, when you are giving yourself more time to recover, you're allowing yourself to put more tension on your muscles. You're allowing yourself to break down more muscle than you would if you do not rest. There's this thing you're going to start learning about over time, but there's a difference between central nervous system fatigue, which is where you just feel tired, like still feel spotty, still feel dizzy after your set. That's all central nervous system fatigue. Now, there's also muscular fatigue. The big thing you want to aim for is getting rid of all your central nervous system fatigue. That's what's not paying you any benefit. So, on compound lifts, things that really make you feel dizzy, lightheaded, I recommend resting at least 5 minutes. Now, this idea is controversial, but I have never seen a reliable study that says you make less gains from resting longer. The one caveat is if your muscles cool down, if you no longer feel warmed up, that's when you rested too long. Now, this next point is going to be my last point, but the thing I hate the most inside of the gym: fucking believe in yourself. People like Greg Doucette, Jeff Nippard claim and sit here, average person, average genetics, benches 245 after 5 years of training, and that's simply just wrong. I've never met somebody, not a singular person, who has trained for that long, taking my advice and not hit significantly above that number. You'd be surprised how much of a role your mental state plays on your strength gains. The second you meet somebody who is way stronger than you and you start working out with them consistently, you'll start making a lot more progress. You know why? It's not because they suddenly have these amazing tips for you. It's because you see that these things are possible. If this person is doing it, then I must be able to do somewhat of what they're doing. So you're going to make a lot more strength gains if you have your subconscious persuaded that you are going to make good gains. You have good genetics, and you don't even need good genetics to bench a lot more than they say. But I know you're thinking this sounds easier than it actually is. How am I going to persuade myself of this? Simply start doing static holds and think of it. Well, if I'm holding this in my arms and it's not even feeling that heavy, I just held it for 10 seconds and I think I could hold it a little longer or go up a little more, then I'm definitely going to be able to bench this at some point. It's definitely benchable. Start thinking about those things inside of your head, and your subconscious will start tuning in to what you actually want it to believe. I hope you learned something. Don't be afraid to ask any questions in the comments, from hormones to something you're trying to figure out inside the gym to some short or YouTube video you saw that you don't know if it actually has truth behind it. Just ask it in the comments and I'll help you out. As lifelong learners, perspicacity is our grindstone for success. Keep on grinding, boys.